Hey, everybody, welcome to the Let's Talk Movie Podcast with me, John, and David, aka Shamrock Balls. And today, here at the channel, we're going to be talking about my favorite director of all time and the first film he ever directed, 1992's Reservoir Dogs. And this is a pretty big deal for me, David, but how do you feel about that?
Well, see, before we start, John, can I just ask you how you're feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good.
That's good. That's good. Because see, if you're not, I just want you to know that you're gonna be okay.
I love that.
Say the goddamn fucking words.
So you're admitting that you're not a doctor.
Yeah, how do I feel about Reservoir Dogs? What can I say? Absolutely amazing movie. One of my favorites from Quentin Tarantino. As a matter of fact, it is my favorite movie from Quentin Tarantino that I've ever watched. So that's how I feel about it. Rank it very highly.
That is very interesting that you would put this as the number one. For me, it'll always be Pulp Fiction. That is my second favorite movie of all time. And I credit Pulp Fiction with being the movie that got me into loving film. Like, I was a fan of movies before Pulp Fiction. Like, Terminator is still my favorite film ever. I saw that before that. Saw Batman 89, all these movies. But to get interested in how the filmmaking process is and like seeing something that's brand new, like these pop culture references, telling the movie out of order, the way people speak, it feeling natural and realistic. It made me just fall in love with movies and want to become the film fan. I don't think we would be doing this
Mhm.
show if it wasn't for Pulp Fiction. And then that circles back to Quentin Tarantino and Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, exactly. And we just had a brief conversation before we went started the show there, and I'd said that you had mentioned that about Pulp Fiction, and I actually said to you that I think you're not the only person in that. I think there was an awful lot of people who watched Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs and get totally inspired by them two movies, and I think it inspired them to love cinema, to love movies, even inspired them to even want to write movies as well because of how natural the dialogue and the characters felt in these movies, and a very unconventional movie making as well around that time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very unique time in film actually for when he came up. And this to be his first movie is incredible. I mean, it was in the 1990s, and independent film in the 1990s was huge. You could argue this is the biggest independent film ever made because it really there was so many movies that tried to rip off Quentin Tarantino's style. No one had seen anything like this. But he never made a movie before, like
Mm.
no small film, nothing. This is just a film nerd essentially. He worked at video archives in California, Quentin Tarantino, and just wanted to make movies with his friends. And he was gonna make this movie. He was gonna make Reservoir Dogs on black and
Hmm.
white 16 millimeter film, but the script somehow ended up in Harvey Keitel's hands, and he, contributed some money. He said he'd produce it, and that's how the movie essentially got funded. But you know, a lot of guys probably have had similar stories, but would fail. Whereas Quentin Tarantino, he blew up after this. Like, he was, even though this movie it only really made back its budget. It didn't have a successful run at the box office. It really got famous because of Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say as well. What you had said there about how Quentin Tarantino started his career in directing movies, and I think his kind of story as well, I think captured the imagination of a lot of people were who loved film, or who wouldn't even say loved film, who was just interested in film. You didn't have to go through a big studio. You didn't have to be, of course, you have to have talent, but I think at that particular time, people were looking at the blockbusters. How can you get a blockbuster made? You have to be really talented, and you have to be in the know, and you have to be connected, or you have to be in a studio system. And here's a guy that came along who was basically, the thing about him was John, he was basically like us.
Mm-hmm.
He was a film fan. He's a film nerd, and of course, he had talent, but he was able to write um, movies and sell a few screenplays to raise the money to then possibly make his first feature, which he wanted to make, which was Reservoir Dogs. And I think he actually did talk about the fact that I think he'd raised $30,000, and he was like, I can make this for $30,000. I could do it in 16 millimeter. I think his original plan was to do it in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he was kind of like, but if you want to give me $1 million to make it even better, then I can do it that way too. I think he said as well, look, I can do it for 30,000 in a garage. Um, But he says, but if you want to give me $1 million, then I'll do it on a warehouse, right? And how it actually ended up with Harvey Keitel was actually a bit of luck. And I think Tarantino said himself in a very humble way, he was like, there's probably 1 million other filmmakers out there, but we just so happened to be able to get this to Harvey Keitel. And without Harvey Keitel, they wouldn't have been able to make the movie. So his producer, Lawrence Bender, his acting teacher knew Harvey Keitel's wife and was able to send the script to the Lawrence Bender. So Tarantino gave it to Lawrence Bender, who then gave it to his acting teacher, who read it, thought it was good, gave it to Harvey Keitel's wife, who read it, thought it was really good, and gave it to Harvey Keitel. And within 3 days, Harvey Keitel phoned, I think it was Tarantino or was it Lawrence Bender? I can't remember, one of them, and said, "Oh, I would really like to make this movie of yours. Yeah, of course, I'd love to be in it. And not only that, I would like to be a producer if I can, but you're in charge. It's your baby type of thing." So that's basically how they got the ball rolling of making Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. And also, Harvey Keitel hooked him up with casting in New York City. So he was able to find guys like Michael Madsen, Steve Buscemi, and Tim Roth actually doing these casting calls, where that's how he found those people. And a lot of other people also were being interviewed or giving what do they fucking call them? I'm blanking right now. Giving screen tests.
Screen tests, yeah.
Yeah, giving screen tests for the movie, and one of them was George Clooney, who didn't get the part, which is always funny to me when George Clooney doesn't get the role. But another guy was supposed to be in the movie, but I think he declined or something happened, was Samuel Jackson. He was originally supposed to be the one cop who was basically Tim Roth's connection to the police world. It was supposed to be him, and when they originally screened this at Sundance, Quentin Tarantino saw Samuel Jackson, was like, "How'd you like your part?"
Well, it's funny because I was watching the Blu-ray special features last night, and there's basically like I think they said they always wanted Harvey Keitel from Mr. White. That was his part. That's why they sent it to him. They wanted him in the movie. It wasn't so much that they wanted him to be a producer, but they thought if him in the movie could help them get the movie made. But it was funny how they went for like you said, they had a casting call and they basically just screen tested a lot of actors in New York and had them come in and read and things like that. And one of them they said came through the door was Steve Buscemi, and they said Steve Buscemi's actual audition wasn't great. And they said it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. But he had this energy. And there's actually footage of him and Tarantino. And Steve Buscemi's playing he's playing Mr. Pink. Sorry, he's playing the Mr. Pink part. And it's Tarantino's playing the Mr. White part, and it's weird how they're pretty much just, it's like a play. They're just doing the movie, just learning the lines off each other. And then there was also another screen test scene where I don't know who it was. I didn't look into it. Somebody else is playing what do you call the main boss again? Joe,
yeah, Lawrence Tierney.
Lawrence Tierney. There's somebody else playing Joe, but Mr. Pink. Steve Buscemi's playing Mr. White.
Oh,
but he was really good at. But once you've seen Harvey Keitel do it, it's hard to imagine anybody else. But he's good at it. It's different, but it's good. And but so it got me kind of thinking. They possibly had some of these guys playing different parts just to see what would best suit their personalities. I do know that originally Tim Roth was offered Mr. Pink and Mr. Blonde, I think, and he was the one that said to Tarantino, I want to play Mr. Orange.
You know why, right?
Well, he'd said something along the lines of he liked the idea that he was the cop, that he was playing two different characters in the movie. In other words, Mr. Orange, the robber, and the cop. But because he was British, he was also a British man or an English man playing an American.
Yep. So that's what attracted him to Mr. Orange, which I thought was fantastic that he would even think that and put that together. But that also kind of makes me like when I watch the movie now, and the reason why it does feel a lot like a play, which the smaller budget does also that makes a lot of sense, where the parts can be intertwined and like these are just actors trying out different things and I probably work best here, but then somehow we still end up with Quentin Tarantino putting himself in here as Mr. Blue. Mr. Brown, which just drives me nuts because it's like I love Tarantino, I do, but
Yeah.
he is not a good actor.
He's definitely not. And the thing is that when I was watching that kind of, I don't know if it was a screen test or what it was them acting that part at the start of the movie with Mr. Pink and Mr. White. I'm like, thank God he didn't cast himself in a major part in this movie.
He wanted to be Mr. Pink. He fucking wanted to be Mr. Pink.
Did he want to be Mr. Pink? Well, he's that small in this movie. He gets away with it, but there's other movies where he plays small parts and he's absolutely terrible. Like, what's the movie he plays the Aussie? Django?
Yeah, he gives himself an Australian accent in the South in America. It doesn't make any sense. And why even try it?
It's so bad. I mean, it just takes you totally out of the film as well. It's bad enough. Like, Hitchcock used to do that, used to do cameos in his movies.
But they never took it out. They were fun.
They were a gimmick, and it was basically like, it was over like that. It was over in a flight.
In movies like Rope, like he still puts himself in the background in the lights. Like that's it. Like that's it. You have to look for the lights just so that he continues with the gimmick. But it's kind of fun to do that. Whereas Tarantino, it's like you're playing a part, and I'm and you're not really great at it.
No, and you're taking me out of the movie now.
Yeah.
Right? And because this is his first movie and nobody knew who Quentin Tarantino was, he can get away with it more. And then when you see him in Pulp Fiction, I don't mind him in Pulp Fiction, but then as it goes on and he's starting to give himself a bigger, it's almost like he fancies himself as an actor. I think I remember hearing him being interviewed saying that it was his girlfriend, who was his girlfriend, very famous actress, was pushing him towards, actually pushed him into being in, was it From Dusk Till Dawn? He didn't want to do it.
He had a lead role in that.
Yeah, she pushed him into doing the acting. But I thought it was very funny how Tim Roth tells the story of how he was cast. He basically got to the stage where he said that he would not do screen tests anymore because he hated them. He says he was no good at doing them. And a lot of actors are like that. Funny enough, saying about Steve.
I can understand that. That's like putting the freaking lens on you. I don't know how I'd feel like that being under a microscope. Some people don't. I don't work personally well. Like when I'm being watched, I do much better if I'm like not being watched. I feel like the pressure will make me make a mistake.
It's the pressure thing as well. Some people are just unnatural at it. Other people just don't work well like that. And he says he stopped doing it. What he actually said was that he had done so many of them and he realized he was getting half of them, half the movies he was getting and half the movies he wasn't. So he thought to himself, well, I've done enough movies now. If somebody wants me in their movie, go and watch the movie. So they approached him for Reservoir Dogs and they said, do a screen test, read for it. And he was like, no. Even Harvey Keitel, you have to. And he was like, not doing it. And he says they were out having something to eat, and Harvey Keitel left, and him and Quentin Tarantino went to a bar and started getting drunk. And he says by the end of the night, he was that drunk, he was telling Tarantino, I will read for you. I'll do it right now for you. so Tarantino wrote down some of the script, and he says they got a little more drink and went back to his apartment, and he says the two of them just sat up all night and just doing the script back and forward to each other. So that was interesting from him about how he actually got the part.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That is pretty freaking funny. I mean, everyone how they got, and even Steve Buscemi, like we kind of moved a little bit past, but it's fascinating with him because I saw him in mostly Adam Sandler comedies before I got to Reservoir Dogs. So I thought he was a comedic actor, and not really a memorable one. And then you discover him in movies like this and Fargo, and you're like, holy shit, Steve Buscemi's a great actor.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest. This was the first movie that I had seen. Let me think. I'd seen all these guys in, actually. This was the movie that introduced me to Michael Madsen and Steve Buscemi and even Harvey Keitel, because he was an older actor. He was probably in movies that I wasn't old enough to watch. Who else is in this? Of course,
Chris Penn, nice guy Eddie.
Chris Penn, nice guy Eddie, which I think he's absolutely brilliant in this film. I love him in this film.
Between this and then the next year of Quentin Tarantino script that he sold, True Romance, I love Chris Penn.
Yeah, he's brilliant. And I was trying to remember when I first seen this movie, and I know I seen it pretty early on in Tarantino's career, as in like, I always thought I'd seen this movie before Pulp Fiction. I always thought I'd seen it around 93, 94. We had it on VHS.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, we had it on VHS. But when I was doing a bit of research last night, apparently it was banned on VHS until mid 1995 in the UK. Yeah.
So that must mean that you either had an import or you more than likely it was just 95 after Pulp Fiction.
Yes. So I have an older brother, Connor. Hello, if you're watching. Um, and he worked in like a local video store, not a rental store, Virgin Mega Stores, which actually sold VHSs, vinyls, CDs, and he would be the one, that would bring home a VHS now and again that he had bought or whatever. So it started crossing my mind, where did he get this from? Like, I was like, did was this as you say, a pirated or an import or something like that? So I messaged him today, and he said to me he can't remember. He must have bought it from when he was working, and I was just like, but I'm near certain I seen this before '95, near certain. So I can't work it out at the minute. I'm sitting thinking, well, it must have been '95, but I definitely thought it was earlier than that, John. And I'm near certain I seen it before, but I could have still seen it before Pulp Fiction if I watched it in '85. I mightn't have seen Pulp Fiction maybe in '85 or '86 because I wouldn't have seen it in the cinema. I was too young. Um, but then I started thinking, maybe, because obviously, we have the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. Maybe it was a copy which came from the South.
Oh, that's possible too.
hmm Because I was looking at it today, and apparently it was banned in the UK. It was in UK cinemas. But what happened was that I've mentioned this before, because of the murder of a young boy by two other boys in England. They reviewed what they call video nasties. And I didn't realize this when Reservoir Dogs went to the censors in Britain, to basically give it a certificate for home video. They had to review the content of it because they didn't want it in people's homes, because they thought it would be a bad influence on younger children who may watch it because of the torture scene. So it kind of got postponed and put back, being brought out on home video until I think it said May 1995. So that's why I was trying to remember when did I first see it. I'm near certain it was like 93 or 94. I'm near certain it was. But anyway, and I absolutely loved Reservoir Dogs. I was captivated by it, and it quickly became a favorite movie of mine, even before I'd seen Pulp Fiction.
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, 'cause I went forward and backwards with it. I saw Pulp Fiction, then went and saw Reservoir Dogs, and Jackie Brown had already been out by then, so I then went and watched Jackie Brown. Kind of his L.A. trilogy of movies, which I think you said are your favorite of his anyway, right? The first three that all take place in different parts of L.A.
Yeah, 100%. Reservoir Dogs, to me, thinking back, John, was one of them movies that it was one of them word of mouth movies. It was one of
Mm,
them movies that people went, "Have you seen Reservoir Dogs?" Pulp Fiction became a real pop culture phenomenon, right? Whereas,
yeah.
like, I remember people playing the soundtrack. I remember people constantly talking about it. I remember people quoting it, right? I used to go into art class in school, and we'd play the soundtrack. And when I think it's called Comanche Come On, which is the scene with well, say the grape scene. All the kids in the class would start laughing. We were teenagers, we were laughing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and the teenagers, or the teacher, hadn't seen the movie, so it was female teacher, didn't know what we were all laughing about. And when that come on, we used to turn it up, right? Because we were in art class, we were allowed to have music on, right? Where we were sitting doing our art. And so that was the difference, in my opinion, between Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. And it was the same with people who had seen Pulp Fiction. It was almost kind of like, again, word of mouth. Well, if you like Pulp Fiction, have you seen Reservoir Dogs? And of course, then when Jackie Brown came out, that came out, what year was that? 97 or 98?
97.
97. I went to see that in the cinema. I think it was 15 here. And I actually went to see that in the cinema. And I was actually disappointed by it because it wasn't Pulp Fiction.
I felt
I,
the same way. I felt the same way as you first. I'm telling you, with Jackie Brown for a long time was on the bottom of my Tarantino list. Every time I watch it now, I'm like, what was wrong with me? And I think because of that movie dealing with actually getting older, it gets better as you get older.
One thing about Jackie Brown is, and listen, I want to do Jackie Brown someday, and we can
Yeah.
really get into it. But one thing about Jackie Brown for me is that, and I never, because I was like a Tarantino fan in the '90s. Of course, I was a Tarantino fan. I mean, I loved Reservoir Dogs and I loved Pulp Fiction. And then Jackie Brown came out, and I was so disappointed. I had to have it in VHS, so I bought the VHS. And I watched it a few times, and I still always felt underwhelmed. But years later, when I went back and watched it in DVD, I don't think I had it in DVD, but it was Blu-ray. I went back and watched it in Blu-ray, and I was just like blown away by it. I was like, this movie's so good. I was just like, I just love the subtlety of it.
Hmm.
compared to the other two movies, it's so subtle, it's so underplayed. It's just, to me, it's his most grown up movie, and like I was thinking about this last night. Like, it could possibly be his second favorite movie for me.
I completely get that. Jackie Brown's easily either 3 or 4 for me. The first two will always be 1 and 2. Pulp Fiction, and Reservoir Dogs. I like those loud and in your face movies, like him just showing up on the scene and making these. And then, I used to really like the Kill Bills, and I don't know, they've kind of like wavered on me a little bit. And then Inglorious Bastards was never really a favorite of mine, but it's still like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I absolutely love. Felt like a
Yeah,
return to form for me. It also feels like it kind of blended his early and his late style together.
yeah. I have a hard time um enjoying his stuff since Jackie Brown. I feel as if they just became too over the top, too absurd, very comic bookish. But I did enjoy the Hateful Eight. Doesn't stand up on repeat and under scrutiny, but I still enjoy it. And I do think that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I really enjoyed Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as well. But the other movies, I don't really care much for.
I can understand that. I really like Django Unchained a lot. I like the style of that movie. That one's fun. The Kill Bills, like I said, I used to really like him. I don't like him as much. I never really thought that Death Proof was one of his better ones. It's all right. I enjoy
Mm,
it for what it is, and the rest that's really it. I really like the Hateful Eight. Actually, the Hateful Eight is basically his version of Clue, and it's just in the snow and the Thing. And you can see all those
yeah,
homages. Because one thing with Tarantino is he loves his homages. As we get into the film, we'll talk about that. But just before we get into it, the way I came to this movie and seeing Michael Madsen, I don't know if you ever even saw this movie, but just showing the age gap, a childhood favorite of mine was the movie Free Willy, and Michael Madsen plays the dad in that. So him chopping off someone's ear, playing a complete psychopath, was a different turn.
yeah. Well, funny enough, you should say that, yes, because when I was watching the special features last night, he said that'll be on my tombstone. The guy from Reservoir Dogs. He says I don't think they're going to have the guy from Free Willy on there.
I'll think of him for Free Willy.
You will, yeah. And then he kind of stopped. He seems like he has a real great sense of humor. He kind of stopped and went, or maybe they will, but maybe they will. But yeah, I remember Michael Madsen, as I say, this was the main film. I'll always remember him from this. But obviously, even on then to do a Species. I remember him saying, "Oh, there's your man from Reservoir Dogs," and then yes, Free Willy. We had that in VHS, and I remember watching that, and it's still the same thing. Oh, there's the guy from Reservoir Dogs. So, but just getting back, sorry, before I forget, I was going to say earlier on, I suppose it's something we could talk about when we get into the movie. But again, this is, as you say, our wheelhouse. This is another one of these movies where I always say that I love movies, smaller, intimate movies with small casts, and especially set in one place. And that's the thing that appeals to me about the Hateful Eight. And it's funny you should say about Reservoir Dogs feeling like a stage play. I think Tarantino probably intentionally done it like that, and it's the same with the Hateful Eight. I think the Hateful Eight was originally written as a stage play, and you could put it on stage and it would nearly work fine. And Tarantino has actually said, I've seen him in interviews, and I don't know if he's serious or maybe it's just tongue in cheek, that for his 10th movie, he says he would love to remake Reservoir Dogs, only with an all black cast. Right? And I've also seen him say that he would like to do a stage production of it.
I could see him doing that. He's a strange guy. You never know what he's like. Just talking, like he just talks. Like there's times that he wants. Because he said for a long time he was gonna do like a Rick Dalton show, like from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like actually do the episodes of I forget what the name of the show he was. Bounty Law, maybe.
Bounty Law, yeah.
Yeah, like he was gonna actually do directed episodes of that on and then put it on Netflix, but that never came to fruition. But he did make a novelization of Once Upon
Yeah.
a Time in Hollywood. So, there's times he says he just wants to become a writer. You never know what he wants to really do. But I would, if he did Reservoir Dogs on stage, I could honestly see that coming to fruition. An all black cast version, I can't see him doing that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I was around that time when I watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and he was like doing a lot of interviews and stuff, and they were talking about what are you gonna do next, and you're right, he just throws these things out, and sometimes I think he's like tongue in cheek, half joking, only half serious, and because he's such a prolific director, I think people take hang on to his every word and take everything that he says literally. And I actually have the novelization of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I know that they released like a special edition of it. And I'm near certain at the back of the special edition, there's like an episode of Bounty Law in there, like a script. I'm near certain something like that. He's got scripts of it. Or he's talked about writing more scripts of it. And he talked about in one of the interviews I listened to was his love of novelizations because, back in the 70s and the 80s, not that I was born in the 70s, but 80s, and
Early 80s.
very early 80s. And but the thing was that when we didn't have VHSs and we didn't have streaming and we and things like that, like the only way if you went to the cinema and watched the movie and then it comes out of the cinema, the only way to relive the movie again was to read the novelization. And he's a big fan of novelizations. He loves novelizations, and he was like, I don't know why they don't continue to do them. And so he wrote a novelization of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I'm kind of hoping he made a mention this too that he was going to go back and do novelizations of all his movies.
That would be cool. I wish you would actually do that. I know that's right up your alley. You love novelizations.
I love novelizations as well because, like I said, I think I've mentioned on our previous streams, John. It's like they basically do like early drafts of screenplays, or they do alternate versions of screenplays because they have to write them for the movie coming out, and it gives you like deleted scenes, and and not only that, like I know directors don't normally do novelizations of their original work, but even if you've got a seasoned writer there, they can write motivation for characters that aren't in the movie. They can do what they're thinking. Like, for example, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the novelization tells you exactly what happened on the boat to Brad Pitt's wife.
Yeah, which is interesting because they left that completely ambiguous in the movie. So.
Yeah, and they tell you in the novelization what actually happens. So there's things like that, which I love, those wee Easter eggs that you find in novelizations that you don't get in the movie. You can do it in long form, and sometimes it can be very enjoyable.
Yeah, no, that's great. As I agree. I think that, hey, if he does more novelizations for his stuff, I'll read them. So I hope he does do them.
100%. If he done one of Reservoir Dogs,
Oh my god! But there's a lot you can do because I don't know if your Blu-ray had it, but I was watching the Blu-ray over here, and they had basically a psychiatrist breakdown of all the characters, and I was able to watch them.
Yeah, there was 4 on there. They've done 4 of them, and I thought that was very interesting because when I was watching one of the deleted scenes, this is how sad I am sometimes doing research for the show. When they found out there's a scene in the movie where where he goes into, I don't even know what the black fella's name is. Mr. Orange goes in and says, "Listen, I'm in." And this is the guy that's running the show. And I've met this one guy. He told me his name's Laurie. And he goes, "Will you go through every picture and you find out exactly who it is?" In like a profile book of if he's been lifted before, if he's been arrested before, done time. So there's a scene of Tim Roth going through that book, and he finds Harvey Keitel's character in the book, and he's able to give his details to a cop, and then she's able to print off his profile sheet of his criminal activities, what he's been suspected of, how dangerous he is, and all this and the crimes he's committed. And then there's a scene after that where she's having a burger with the two of them and explaining about the job, which he mentions at the start of this movie, which went wrong. Which, remember, he says at the start of the film there were 2 jobs back. He's a 4-man job. One of them turned out to be an undercover cop. Well, according to her, when they found out, they turned up at the cop's house where he was having a party with other cops and their wives and just opened fire on them and killed a load of them. Just setting the background, the scene of how dangerous Mr. White actually is. It's not just Mr. Blonde is a very dangerous, psychotic person. Mr. White is considered a psychotic as well.
Well, we do see it in the movie, like for what he is. We do see moments of that, which we'll get into. I think we can start getting into the movie right now anyway.
Yes, 100%.
And the movie opens very interestingly with Quentin Tarantino talking about Madonna and his theory on what is Like a Virgin about, which is a great theory, by the way.
Yeah, I love that way. I always remember like having the soundtrack and it's Pulp Fiction. I remember listening to Pulp Fiction, as I said before that, and having the Reservoir Dogs soundtrack, and it was the first time that I knew of dialogue being in a soundtrack. And you always start it with Quentin Tarantino, his voice saying, "What the fuck was I talking about?"
What's that name?
What the fuck was I talking about?
I said True Blue was about a guy.
And yes, this scene here were a beautifully shot scene of the camera just sweeping around the table, and the dialogue is quite comical. It's nothing to do with basically the film at all whatsoever, or about what they're about to go and do, you know. And it's introducing these characters, and you can really see how likable they are, and how fun they are, and how funny they are. And if you haven't seen it before, you're kind of wondering, what is this about? What is going on? And I just love how it slowly introduces every single character, and they're almost each other's equals. There's no boss. There's no, you know what I mean? Because even Joe as well, like they're even like taking the piss out of him in his book, and Toby,
Toby
Toby Chu,
Chong, Toby
Toby Chu.
Chong.
I love how his first name, you hear him saying, "Who the fuck is Toby?"
Well, that's what makes it so interesting. Them going around the table is like there is two different conversations going on at the same time, which is pretty well. That's to write that is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier on, what's great about this movie, as you know, is that Tarantino writes dialogue like what normal everyday people talk about, like pop culture and music and movies and what's happening on the news, what's on the radio. And
I love that. That's a big part of this movie.
yeah, and the thing is that, you know, he's 100% right. Okay, you're telling a movie, you're telling a story, you've only got an hour and a half to tell it. Yes, the characters have to talk about the plot and drive it forward with action or dialogue or whatever it may be. You know, it's not real life, but at the same time, it's so refreshing to see people or actors come across or characters come across as like, as you said, normal everyday people. And as they're talking about Madonna, now that I'm older, all I can think about is that her brother-in-law was sitting at that table.
Oh yeah, that's very funny. Well, yeah, R.I.P. to her, to him, because that's very sad. Chris Penn was such a great actor in his own way.
Yeah, he was, yeah. And of course, that's Sean Penn's brother, and he was,
Mhm.
I don't know if they were divorced by then, by 91 or 92, but
Probably, their marriage was short and quick, I think.
yeah, and of course, Chris Penn is in a Close Range, and that's where I'm not sure. I think, you know, they were married by then. I think, you know, and then he got her. Sean Penn got her involved in the Close Range to write the song for a Close Range.
I love that song.
It's a fantastic movie, John, and brilliant song as well. But yeah, this is basically just kind of setting the scene at the start of this movie to introduce you to these characters. You don't know who they are yet, you know, but you're getting to know their personalities.
Yeah, and you get this exactly. You get the great Steve Buscemi, tipping speech, which is fantastic. Also, still rings very true today. You can play that in an economics class. The way that they lay this out, and then the way he sways him. First of all, I'm all for digging your feet in on an issue and sticking to your guns. But when your meal is being paid for,
Yeah.
shut the fuck up.
Yeah. And I love how Joe comes back and says, right, who didn't put in?
He knows right away without. He looks like first.
He's right. Who didn't put in? He looks at the $1 each. It's only $1 like each, and there's about 6 of them. And I go, but who didn't put in? But here, who's the one to point them out?
In my notes, I said Mr. Orange ratting from the very beginning.
The first one to go, Mr. Pink. And then he's like, why didn't you put in? And then he says he doesn't believe in it, and he says to him, shut up. But I love how he says, I love how he turns out and he says to them right away. Mr. Pink just backs down right away, and I love the line where he goes, all right, normally I wouldn't do this. He still has to make the point, like, normally I wouldn't do this.
Yeah, I know.
But because you paid for breakfast, I'll put in this time. And I love how Joe just says to him, cough up, you cheap bastard.
Like, he's just writing it off as him being cheap. He doesn't care. Like, I don't care about what kind of your philosophy on tipping. Just give me the dollar. Which Lawrence Tierney, that's just kind of how he is. He's a brute through this entire movie. Like, just kind of like a throwback to which is kind of why he got cast. Even though apparently no one liked him.
Yeah, apparently nobody got on with him. And I love how he's like, give me my book back. and that's then we go on to the next scene, of course, when the music kicks in. Well, you hear them talk about the super sounds of the 70s, which is another point that I wanted to make about the movie as well, John, is that there's no score in this movie. There's no music in this movie, as in like a movie score. There's no original score to kind of like create tension or set the scene or anything like that. And that's one thing that Tarantino does absolutely brilliant in his movies, is how he picks music for his movies. And it's fitting for this movie. And I think that's also what makes it a wee bit more suspenseful. It makes it a wee bit more realistic, is that the only music we hear in this movie is coming from the radio, and he integrates that into the movie. People switching the radio on, people turning the radio down. He does it in Pulp Fiction again as well. But here, when we hear the Steve Wright Super Sounds of the 70s continues, then the song comes on, and then walking down the parking lot in them black suits with the white ties and the sunglasses. I have to say, it must be the coolest credit scene the movie of all time. What do you think?
Yeah, that was hugely influential on me. I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life. I had one thing when I got married. I wanted to dress just like that. Thin tie, black suit, black sunglasses. And, I think I've said this before. When you get married, it's a game of compromise. And that means that I didn't get to wear that suit at the wedding.
Well, I don't know what it's like in the States, but I mean, like, I'm not married myself, but I've heard that, renting out wedding suits is very expensive. So just to go for a black suit and a black tie, that would have cost you a few quid, though.
But we did rent suits. That's the whole thing. I just still had just not the one that I wanted to rent. Don't try and defend her on this, all right?
Not at all. Not at all. I actually had a thin black tie, but I give it away, and I was going to wear a white shirt and thin black tie, and I have a black suit in there I've had for years. I don't know what shape it's in, I don't know, but I was never going to wear it for the show, but to say that I couldn't be annoyed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. You don't want to get all dressed up. Like these guys, they're wearing this for a job. It makes sense, which is interesting. As you said, we don't know what the hell that these guys are out there doing. And then we hard cut from this cool ass, opening credits right into guys screaming in the car, bleeding.
which totally kind of throws you as well. One thing about the suits I can say as well is that, Tarantino was kind of known as, what would you say? Yeah, it was supposed to be just so cool. I mean, it's impractical, I think, to go and do a job like that with your face showing, even if you are wearing sunglasses. Okay, you're all wearing the same suits, but you can see your face. So unless we're going to put stockings over their heads or something like that. But yeah, that kind of comedic, kind of fun opening, then, as you say, fades into this horrific scene in a car with two of these characters. One's bleeding from the gut, is in a real bad way, and is screaming in pain.
Hurt real fucking bad, but you ain't dying.
So it's kind of shocking to just go from that to the next scene.
And have you ever seen anything like that before? Like, I've seen people get shot and, like, in movies get killed, and you get the big shots of the squibs, but then they usually fall off camera fast. But to see him in grueling pain with like buckets of blood and blood all over the interior of the car, Harvey Keitel like reaching back, grabbing his head, trying to comfort him, like he's in a weak state, like you're almost like, letting your guard down, almost like as a man, like screaming and crying in pain like that. Like, I don't know. I'd never seen anything like that when I first saw that in this movie.
I'm trying to think if I had seen anything like that before in a movie. I mean, I don't know how it came across to me at the time. Quint getting eaten by the shark in Jaws, where he's screaming in pain and his blood comes out of his mouth. I know he's physically being eaten, so I had seen a grown man kind of screaming in pain during a death scene, but something which is just a bullet wound. I don't know. I don't think I had. I mean, I'd seen Terminator 2 and things by that stage. You'd seen people getting shot in the knee. Okay, you didn't see a lot of blood, but they were screaming in pain. So, I don't know how it came across to me at the time. I don't think I was fazed that much by it. I think it was maybe just encapsulated by the scene, John. Where's this going?
Huh. Oh, yeah. Well, maybe, I don't know. Maybe it was when I saw it, but yeah, it really like threw me off, like seeing the amount of blood like that. Like for me, that was believable. Like this is what happened if somebody got shot in the stomach. The amount of like trying to imagine the amount of pain that must be, because Harvey Keitel lays it out for him that you can live a long time. It just really, really hurts. And it's like, he's asking him, so are you a doctor? Answer the question. Are you a doctor? And he's like, no. So then you admit that you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And then obviously he tells him, "You're gonna be okay."
Harvey Keitel is so good in this role.
No, listen, every one of them are fantastic, and but the thing that does kind of come across me as fairly weird is how Keitel is comforting him. It's that was strange to me. I mean, I don't know. It kind of makes me think that there's something else in Keitel's life that we don't know. Has he lost a son at one stage? Does he have children? It sometimes come across a wee bit homoerotic.
Well, it doesn't fit the guy that you kind of see throughout the movie or the guy who they talk about throughout the movie. Like this guy, this
Mm,
hard-edged guy. Like when you see him later in the movie, you'll see him, like I said, trying to get away. Point blank, no problem, grabs the two guns like he's in a John Woo movie and shoots the cops right in the head, kills them, moves on with his day. No problem at all. So he's no problem taking anyone's life, but he seems to really care about this guy for some odd reason. So yeah, it does come off like homoerotic, or we don't really know too much about his past. We know
no.
that, like, he's worked with Joe before, teamed up with someone named Alabama, which is kind of like a tease to True Romance, but I can never put that math together for it to make me believe that.
Yeah, well, I think that is supposed to be. I don't know if it's supposed to be the same person, but it is a direct reference, I think, to True Romance.
Well, yeah, well, there's a couple little, like, the universe of Tarantino, Vic Vega, Vincent Vega, like they're supposed to have the Vega brothers. And
Yeah.
honestly, with their speech patterns and the way that they kind of behave, very believable.
Well, from what I'm led to believe is that the original character in Pulp Fiction was supposed to be what do you
Michael
call
Madsen?
Michael Madsen? Sorry, yeah. What's his name again? It's Vic Vega and Vincent. What was his name? Victor Vega and Vincent Vega. Yeah, it's Vic Vega. But that was supposed to be him in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, originally Mike Madsen was that because John Travolta in Pulp Fiction was actually not originally the first choice. It was supposed to be Michael Madsen, and Tarantino was talking to him from Dusk Till Dawn, and Tarantino and John Travolta's like, I like this guy.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, though as I say, I forgot what I was going to say about it about his character and what we're led to believe that he's like. Exactly. Sorry, that's what I was going to say about as well. That's one thing that I find. Look, it's been about I don't know how 6 years since I've watched this movie again. I've watched it so many times when I was younger. But again, watching it a few years later, John, and watching for the pod, it's one thing that I can't understand is why. And I know we have to make a movie here, but or they had to make a movie. I don't understand why Mr. White was so defensive of this guy. He barely knows. Why did he take such a liking to this one guy against people that he'd known for years and done jobs with for years? That doesn't make sense to me in this movie. That's a problem for me.
Yeah, I think that's something that's left very ambiguous because I've always had that, and it comes full circle in the end. Everything that that Chris Penn is saying at the end of this movie to him. Oh, look, there's the puppy. It
Yes.
comes all full circle at the end with everything that Chris Penn says to Mr. Orange and to Mr. White at the very end of the movie is 100% true. Like, we've done jobs with you for how long? You know us. We don't know this guy. This is the only guy we didn't know. Everybody else we know. You're telling us that this guy, Mr. Blonde, who we know, who shut his mouth in prison for us, you're telling me that's the guy that was going to try and make out? It's like none of it adds up. And even for Mr. White, none of it adds up. I don't know if it's just an older man at the end because he is the oldest man in this crew, essentially still working with them. Like Steve Buscemi, Mr. Orange, or Quentin Tarantino. They're all, I mean, Eddie Bunker's 1,000, I guess.
Yeah.
But he's kind of just in the background anyway. Like he
He's
kind of
dead
gets
by then anyway.
yeah, he's the most glossed over character in the whole movie.
You forget about him. I'm sitting counting the colours. Which one's that guy? What happened to such and such? Oh, either way. That's right. I think Eddie Bunker's only at the start, and then he has a line. What was the line? He says about what's special? Taking you in the back to suck your dick.
Yeah, I felt like that was like him paying homage. Like Tarantino gave himself more screen time than Eddie Bunker. Because we've seen Tarantino die. Like actually the way he dies is pretty messed up. He gets like shot in the head and it's like blinding him.
Yeah, that's right. But as you were saying, go back to the warehouse. It's just that leads us to Mr. Pink. So what I was saying about Mr. White, and of course, yeah, what I've talked about there happens throughout the movie, but that's okay. We can get to there. But it's like when Mr. Pink comes in, then and he's like, fucking hell, were we set up or what? And then Mr. And this is the thing too. It doesn't get me. And I don't want to feel as if I'm picking holes in this movie. I love this film. It's absolutely brilliant. But I was watching again. I was kind of like, you're right. Mr. Wade is one of the older guys. So he seems like a smart enough guy, savvy enough guy. It took Mr. Pink to tell him we were set up. He didn't think this when he was escaping. And he does make a point of saying, I haven't had time to think. I've been dealing with him. I haven't had time to think. I don't know. I just think if I was in that situation and I was supposed to be as smart as these guys, I would have clicked right away. Fuck, we're set up. You know what I mean? I would have been, boom, we're set up. Get out of here now. Right? Because Mr. Pink puts it together right away. And of course, look, this is one thing I love about this film. You talked about it in Pulp Fiction. They do it in this movie kind of first. It's a non-linear type of movie where Quentin Tarantino made a conscious decision, possibly because of budget reasons too, but I think for artistic reasons as well, to kind of like not show the robbery and not show a lot of the action and have the characters kind of like explain that to us as the movie unfolds, explain the story as it unfolds. And not only that, that also, in my opinion, causes a lot of paranoia with the audience and mistrust within the audience because you don't see what happened. So you're relying on them and telling you a series of events that you did not witness as an audience member. And who do you trust? Who do you believe? Who's a reliable narrator? Who is not? Okay, and that's what's genius about this. So when Mr. Pink says to him, look, we were set up, and he's kind of like brings him in the back, and they start talking about, well, what happened? And their stories start conflicting. So it's like, well, who do I believe here? Do I believe Mr. Wade? Do I believe Mr. Pink at this stage of the movie? And also, you're also thinking, well, it can't be Mr. Orange because he's shot.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's no way he's the cop or he set them up because he gets shot, not the guy that's dying. He couldn't have set them up. But the thing is, I also love as well in the bathroom, the way when Mr. Pink cocks his gun and you see Mr. Wade stop and kind of look at him.
Fuck, man, you panic on the inside. In your head,
That all just throwing up all that kind of mistrust and paranoia starting to creep into the movie.
Well, yeah, because it's actually very cool is that at this point, if you're watching this for the first time, you don't even know that they're what they did. Like you only were just with Tim Roth and Harvey Keitel in the car. They never mentioned that they robbed anything. He's just shot. So they never mentioned the opening scene. So all the way up to this, it's until Steve Buscemi gets there and he starts explaining about like what he did in there that we realize, okay, they robbed the place because Mr. White asked for where the diamonds are. Okay, they were there to steal diamonds. That's what their thing is, and something went awry and somebody set them up. And they're exactly like, how do you trust anyone? And this is something when people argue about Quentin Tarantino movies and the way he speaks, like has his characters speak and how they curse and they're racist and they're piece of shit. Well, that's because they are. Like these guys they're diamond robbers. They're not good people. Mr. White is not a good person. The only one you could argue is Mr. Orange, and even him. I have a confliction when he shoots that woman. you know,
that, to me, is just on instinct.
It is just on instinct, and I understand why he did it, but it does create conflict in me.
But as the movie unravels, and as we get on this, you do hear it's hard to make out sometimes. I think the dialogue in this movie, which adds to the realism too. But when you watch
it's very loud in those flashback scenes to the robbery.
Yeah, but some of the dialogue, because it is very realistic, and they're overlapping the dialogue, and they're saying things that maybe aren't in sync. Like you hear him saying, once you know the whole movie as well, John. Once we get to the end and you realize the whole movie just comes together, then you realize what he's saying. You hear him saying, "She had a little baby, man." She had a little baby.
See, I've never really picked up on that. I've heard him say like to himself, like, "I can't believe she shot me, man." Like he can't. I never heard him saying anything about her though.
Well, when I think it's when Mr. White is dragging him through the doors of the warehouse, you hear him kind of saying, she had a little baby, man. She had a little baby. So, he's feeling remorse about what he had done by killing this woman. You know what I mean? So, but the thing is too, like you're saying about we don't know, and you're right, because I've seen this movie so many times. I forget that, if you're watching this for the first time, it's unraveling that these guys here, because you're right, you don't know what's happened. All you know is that they were having dinner or breakfast, and then the next thing was this guy's shot. Why? And then he drags him into a warehouse, and you hear him saying, like, we'll wait here for Joe. He's going to get you a doctor. And then he says about the diamonds, and then you really, I think he says about diamonds after this, but he talks about Mr. Blonde, and things have happened so quickly at the start. You don't know who's who really at this moment in time. They make a point of saying about, stop with this Mr. White shit. And he's like, I don't want to know your name. He's like, don't be telling me your name. So you're starting to learn, oh, they've got aliases here. And then they talk about Mr. Blonde, about being a psychopath and shooting up the place that they're in and killing, which I have questions about that, which I'll get into later on. But the thing is that that's when you're starting to learn about his character. And one thing I must mention as well is that this isn't the first film that a bunch of characters have been named after colors, by the way. There's a movie called The Taking of Pelham 123, which came out in 1973 or 74, starred Robert Shaw, and they were all they were doing a robbery in the underground of New York, I think it was, and they all give each other aliases and dressed up in disguise.
Yeah.
And they were called Mr. Well, I don't think it was specifically the same colors. There were certain colors overlapped. There was no Mr. Blonde. I don't think it was a Mr. White. There might have been like a Mr. Yellow and a Mr. Green and a Mr. Brown, Mr. Purple. Maybe, I'm not sure. Can't remember.
Yeah, that's very, very true. I'm glad you brought that up because the Taking of Pelham 123, he lifted a lot. Tarantino loves to lift things. Another thing is he basically said a lot while he was talking about this was his version of The Killing, like that, another heist film directed by Stanley Kubrick, which I love it. But when you do watch The Killing, that's like one of those things that unlock, like, yeah, he took a lot from this. Like, same thing like with Pulp Fiction, you watch some old blaxploitation movies, you're like, okay, I see what he lifted this from this. And he wears his inspirations a lot like Brian De Palma, I said, where it's like the most obvious. Like Brian De Palma was trying to make like a Hitchcock movie, and you could just see it all over the place. You could just see right where Tarantino took stuff from.
Yeah, I think I'd read a quote where he said that, oh, yeah, he made The Killing, but this is my killing.
Yeah, I love that quote, but this is my killing. But they're structured so similarly.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen The Killing, but I've heard that. Listen, I've always said that about Tarantino. As I say, there's an awful... I don't have an issue with it to a certain extent, because what do they say? They say, if you're going to steal from the best, you know what I mean? But I have to say that a lot of the stuff that he does, a lot like Scorsese with Hitchcock, is like Tarantino just lifts from everybody else, and he very cleverly mashes it together. And with his clever dialogue on top of it, that looks shiny and brand new, and it's not.
No, it's not. And that's the thing that you discover as a film fan is, I mean, I guess through life too, is like when you start to realize, like when you start hearing people breaking down scripts, like, oh, this goes all the way back to Shakespeare. And it's like, damn, I didn't get this until now. Like, you realize like things aren't as original as you thought when you first see it. You think that's like the coolest thing in the world. You're like, that's existed for hundreds of years. You're like, well, it's cool here though.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And then this brings us like when these guys actually almost come to blows. That's when we first see Mr. Blonde.
You kids shouldn't play so rough. Somebody's gonna start crying.
This movie, compared to a lot of other Tarantino movies, again, I think with the low budget, is he leaves the camera on for a long time and does a lot of long shots. Like, like he'll pull the camera back and a character will be standing there and they won't break for a good amount of time. Like, they don't break for a while on this point.
See, I was thinking about that too, John, about a lot of the long shots and things like that. Sometimes I think it was to draw the movie out so it's longer, right?
That's a good point too.
Because maybe the script wasn't that long. But I also think it, like we said, about makes for that kind of like stage play type of thing where you have your characters in character for the full scene, even though the camera's not on them.
That's a good point too.
They're staying in character, and I do love that because they come to blows in, because you can see the tension starting to rail. And I have to say, I made a note here as well, is that Mr. Pink is right.
He's the smartest guy there out of all them. He's the smartest.
They should not be there. Once you realize that we were set up, they have to get out of there right away and go somewhere else. You know what I mean? Never mind kind of, let's wait for Joe. This was the plan. The plan goes out the window when the plan went out the window.
What are you trying to stick to right now? Like, the cops, you killed cops. They're going to find you. And if you think that there's an inside job from a cop, what do you think, that they've been giving information to no one?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing was that what I absolutely love is that when Michael Madsen is standing there cool and calm as anything, he's standing there with like a drink out of like McDonald's or somewhere like that, some fast food joint. So in other words, he basically stopped and got something to eat. No, and then they said, go to the warehouse here. It's so funny.
Well, that's something that I think they kind of unlocked in those like psychiatric breakdowns on the Blu-ray. Is that he's living in his own world? Like this is just something that's like normal to him. Like because he kidnapped a cop too. That's one thing that he reveals right away to them, which we get the first time in any Tarantino film, the trunk shot.
Yeah, that's right, and it's a great surprise. I love how him and Mr. White nearly come to blows first, and then Mr. Pink's nice kind of playing referee, and he says to him afterwards, I bet you're a big Lee Marvin fan.
Yeah, me too.
And then I says, "Come on out, I've got something in the trunk." And they're like, "What? What did he makes a comment about something to go with your fries, doesn't
Yeah.
he?
Oh, now this is actually really cool too. And I don't remember where I heard this, but somebody explained this. This is something really hard to do as far as a oneer goes. You notice how the music's playing when they leave the place, like when they walk in and out the door, they keep the audio going inside the warehouse, but it'll leave and when they go outside, and it'll change going back inside as well. Really cool how they did that. Must have been really hard.
Oh yeah, I love that as well. That's one of those wee things that you notice in the movie as well. You notice it more when he's playing the music later on.
Oh, later it's way more
Of
noticeable.
course, because he's got the radio on. But I
Yeah.
love how the guy that plays the cop, he actually said in an interview, they were sitting about one day waiting, because as they do when you're on set, you're sitting about waiting an awful lot. And he says he went into the office, the production office, and Michael Madsen was then sleeping on the ground, on the floor, and he woke him up and he says, "Take me for a raid, and I just want to do something for my character here. Because you take me for a raid in the trunk of your car just to see what it's like." And he says he did. He took me out and took me for a drive, and he says knew what it was like being stuck in there, and all you can see is like the rear lights coming on when he's braking and stuff, and when he's stopping, and then Michael Madsen told the story, and basically Michael Madsen was like, I was lying sleeping on the production floor, and he woke me up, and he was like, "I need you to help me with my character. Could you put me in your trunk or drive me around the place?" And Michael Madsen was like, "Why?" And he was like, "I just need to do it for my character." And then Michael Madsen says, "Well, I started thinking, this would be good for me." He says, I was originally, he says, Quentin Tarantino and the producer, Lawrence Bender, seen me doing it when I left. And he says, I was just going to drive around the block, but he says, as I was driving around, I went, you know what? Let's go a wee bit further. And he says, I drove down like this alleyway where there was like loads of potholes. And he says, I could hear him screaming in the back, let me out, you son of a bitch, let me out. And he says, I was driving on, and he says, I seen a fast food joint. And I thought, I'll go and get something to eat here. And he says, I went in to get something to eat, and I turned the music up in the car so they couldn't hear him screaming in the boot, or in the trunk, as you call it in the States. And the guy who plays the policeman denies this. He's like, no, I buy. He says, Michael will tell you I got out of the trunk screaming and crying. And he says, I didn't do that. Michael Madsen says, I wish I had the camera on him when I let him out. He was sweating and he was really upset with me, really pissed off on me. But it got me thinking, the day the Tarantino and Lawrence Bender see him come back with like fast food, and went, you know what? That's what you should do. You should come into the warehouse with fast food.
It is a genius thing, like that. He's got the drink in his hand, he tosses it away. He's like, I finished the fries in the car.
Yeah. But that is one thing that I didn't actually realize, and I've watched this movie numerous times, John. That this warehouse is actually a mortuary.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
And
realize that.
You could see some of the stuff in the background if you pause it and look closely.
There's like caskets, there's a hearse, and then when they go in to wash their hands earlier in the movie, that's like an embalming room.
Mm-hmm. And Tim Roth's apartment is actually built on the second story of that warehouse, which is interesting because I always thought that looked like a weird looking apartment. It looked very I worked in a warehouse for a long time, and sometimes they do have second floors, and they're always like, they don't ever do the right insulating. They usually just put plywood over the wood or whatever. It's cheap floor, and that's what that apartment looked like. So when I looked into it and it was a warehouse second floor, I was like, makes a lot of sense. They always go cheap on those.
Yeah, well, I was going to say it looked very, very cold.
Very cold.
Very, very cold. And of course, the mortuary, it didn't need too much heating. It has to stay chilled. But yeah, I think they even used the roof as well when they filmed the scenes with Tim Roth and his cop mate, who when they were trying to work out the scene and stuff, or build his character to become this bank robber or this thief. But yeah, then we have the first flashback scene, which is pretty smart. We go back and we see how Mr. White was recruited to do this job, and then obviously they then do the flashback to Mr. Blonde. And I really like that flashback about Mr. Blonde as well, John, because it really shows the loyalty that
Mhm.
Mr. Blonde has for Joe and Chris Pence's character, Nice Guy
Nice
Eddie.
guy. Love
Yeah.
Nice Guy Eddie.
Yeah. I love that scene in the office because they remind me, they don't say it, but it feels as if Nice Guy Eddie and Mr. Blonde grew up together. They're almost like brothers.
You only do that with somebody you're really close to. Like you'd fuck around with them to the point where like you're calling them gay and stuff. Like, you see that,
Yeah.
daddy? Like, and then for the father to even go along with the joke, like, yeah, we're sorry, buddy. You know, we were talking about how you've been such a fuck up. Like, you know, like
Yeah.
they feel more like a family. They feel like I feel like that's probably what it was. Is that, and that's why maybe Nice Guy Eddie took the death of him so hard too. It's like maybe they were childhood friends, and he's always just kind of been a part of the family. They kind of like. I mean, obviously, it's a psychotic version of Tom Hagen from The Godfather, but something along those lines.
Yeah, and you're right. I love that kind of like you see that camaraderie between them, and to me they remind me of like two really good mates who are that close to could be brothers, and they've been there, seen there, done it together. They trust each other. You know what I mean? And I love how when they stop fighting, they continue like the banter back and forward, and he's like, "Don't have me to slap you like a bitch. It's talk like a bitch. I'll have to slap you like a bitch." And then I love how he's like, "Come on, man!" And he goes to get up, and that's when Joe says to them, "For Christ's sake, sit down. Enough of this." But once they start talking about business, right, they're deadly serious. Once they start getting into the business talk, I really like that. He's like, "Daddy, I've got an idea. Why don't we bring him in?" And at first it's kind of like I got across my mind last night. I started thinking, I was like, or the other Sunday night when I watched this, I was like, okay, it always came across to me as if they were looking after this guy because he done time for them and he didn't open his mouth, right? And then I started thinking, are they just trying to keep him sweet?
From like opening his mouth.
And then because he didn't seem too thrilled about, I've got to get this Scagnati guy off my back, and they're like, well, listen, we'll get you a job. And you see his face, he's like, I don't really want to do a job. And he's like, no, he won't be there. It's a beauty about the job. Whenever he comes down, you're away doing this, or you're away doing that, or we've got you doing this. And he's like, right, okay. But he still doesn't seem thrilled about it, which then got me kind of thinking, and this always kind of crossed my mind at, I don't know what stage, but it did cross my mind that the fact that he went in there and started opening up on people, and he made the excuse about, if they had done what I told them not to do, then they would be alive. It almost feels as if he foiled it on purpose.
It's very possible, which could lead you, like, maybe you would make it believable to the excuse that Mr. Orange was trying to make, like, he was going to double cross you guys. But I don't know. It's very possible, but because if this guy's a complete and utter psychopath, like you have to know it, like, especially if you've known him for his entire life. He doesn't care about anyone but himself, but he does seem to care about these guys, and they seem to care about him. You could look at it as that they just have the friendly banter all the time because like they don't want him to open his mouth. And it's just kind of like, I'm playing you, you're playing me, we need each other kind of thing. That's another way to look at it.
Yeah, I just started thinking, okay, he's a psychopath. And rather than, and look, he sees the police as his enemy, right? He's not gonna tell Emmons anything. I'll do the time, and I'll sort you out when I get out, because you believe, like they say about psychopaths, don't take responsibility.
Never.
They blame everybody else, right? So it's kind of like, I'll get out, and then I'll sort you out. And he doesn't have to walk in and shoot them, because maybe walking in and shooting them is too good for them. But here, I can fuck their heist up. I can royally fuck them up, right? He doesn't care anymore. Maybe you don't know what goes through his head. I don't know. It's just a theory I had that he balls it up on purpose to get back at them. And not only that, the profile on the Blu-ray, I don't know. It sounded like Steve Buscemi was actually narrating that. Now I don't know who wrote that profile or where it came from, but basically the profile for Mr. Blonde was he's a serial killer. Because it talked about that, he had a hatred. I think it mentioned, it said Mr. Brown had a hatred for women, but it mentioned about Mr. Blonde basically was a sadistic, and he liked to torture people, and he was a sexual
deviant.
I think it said deviant or whatever. And a lot of those things that they listed for him, I thought that's like a serial killer. That's like a Ted Bundy. That's like somebody. So if you want to read really deep into this, you could dream up that he was murdering women and hadn't been caught, and people like that don't go and tell their best friends they're doing that.
No, they don't. They keep that close to the vest. And this guy does seem like somebody, because like he doesn't really waste any dialogue. Like he's not playing around with them. Like Mr. White and Mr. Pink, like they have no problem. They don't shut up the entire time they're with each other. They're always talking. Mr. Orange can't speak, but Mr. Blonde, he's just speaking when he has to speak, and he's never ever raising his voice. Even when we get into the torture scene, he's always in the same exact demeanor, no matter what. Never ever escalates for him.
Yeah, and the thing is, another clue in the movie, I don't know if it's intentional, is when Nice Guy Eddie's driving to the warehouse, you see an orange balloon.
No,
Go
that's
past the
intentional.
car. It's intentional, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of orange hints throughout. Actually, earlier when it was just Mr. Pink and Mr. White in there talking, if you look behind them on the wall, there's a lot of orange soap.
Ah, right. Okay. Very
Yeah,
good. Yes.
so there's always orange. This movie takes foreshadowing. Once you watch it like over 10 times, it's very obvious who it is, and they give it away pretty fast too, which is cool because then you're not spending the entire movie with the mystery. Now we're dealing with it.
Before we get that, I think it's an R in when you find out that Mr. Orange is the cop. And then you've got that final half an hour about how he got involved, which the movie kind of switches then. It's all about, how he gets involved.
How long do you think they spend in the time from the heist all the way through the time that like Nice Guy Eddie and Joe get there and it all comes to shit and blows? Like, because the movie itself, like we get a lot of flashbacks, but how much time do you think they're actually at the warehouse?
Well, I remember reading a thing that Tarantino says that he was interested in doing something in real time, even with the flashback. No, the flashback. So it's kind of done in real time.
Oh, okay, that would make sense then. Yeah, because they do like make sure they leave those long camera shots. So it's not very long because it does still feel like the whole movie does take place before like the afternoon, like it's all the morning.
So it's an hour and a half, basically.
Okay,
maybe an hour and a half from when they get to the warehouse to when the ending happens.
right.
If it's real time, I mean, including this flash. So say a flashback. Say for example, Chris, Nice Guy Eddie, Mr. Pink, Mr. White go and get the diamonds. I think we have a flashback scene, don't we? No.
Yeah, well, they leave and then they leave. Well, no, we don't get the flashback until after
we
Mr.
see the
Blonde gets shot.
We see the torture, and then we have the flashback, and by the end of the flashback, they're back with the diamonds. So so that whole period of showing Mr. Orange and how he got involved in this, and his coaching and his training and everything else, say it takes 20 minutes. So it took Emmons maybe 20 minutes to go and get the diamonds and come back. That's what I'm guessing. Just guess that thrown out because he did say he wanted to do a film in real time, and that would make sense an hour and a half. But this is a question that I was wondering, John, why, we talked about how Nice Guy Eddie is such great. We feel as if he's got a great friendship with Mr. Blonde. Why did he not take him to go and get the diamonds with Mr. Pink and leave Mr. White?
Thought the exact same thing, and I just like I think it's just really just for the film because that crossed my mind too. I'm like, that's your buddy. Wouldn't you want to go take your buddy with you, a guy you trust? Why are you taking Mr. White? But then again, they like Mr. White too. Like those are the only two people we actually see Joe personally hiring. We see him only hiring Mr. White, and that's the only ones we get any sort of background on. We never get anything on Mr. Pink. We don't know what he ever did before this.
True. That's very true, and the only stuff we get on Mr. Pink is what he tells us is, I've known Joe since I was a kid, but I wouldn't even fully trust him, and things like that. I do love that line though when Nice Guy Eddie comes in and he turns around and he says, "Does anybody know what happened to Mr. Blue?" And then and then Mr. Blonde says, "Well, either the cops got him or they don't, or he's dead or he's alive." And I see Nice Guy Eddie going, I'm not getting any answers out of him. You know what I mean? It's such brilliant dialogue, and he knows exactly what he's doing. He's drinking out of his thing. He's just like,
he's just fucking with them. He's always trying to entertain himself. Mr. White's like got to blow a gasket over here. Mr. Blonde's sitting down, drinking like nothing. Like they didn't just kill a bunch of people. It's just a normal day to this guy.
Yeah, it doesn't faze him. Well, that's all the time in prison is done to him.
Yeah, this is just like, I don't think he cares if he dies or not.
Yeah, and this is the thing too as well. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. Why is Nice Guy Eddie so adamant? I didn't mention it earlier. Sorry, it was Mr. White I was talking about why was he protecting Orange so much. But this is another thing is that when he first walks in, why is he so adamant that there's been no setup? He wasn't there. Why is he so adamant? Is it just arrogance? Is it just the case of I put this thing together, well, him and his dad, and I picked you guys, and I know none of yous have done this because I put it together. Is that all it is?
Yeah, I think that's all it is. And I think actually it really is like his job. Like, I think it's like Joe's the boss. Like, it's still him. But I think that this is kind of him, Joe letting his son put it all together. He picks like the people that he wants to use and everything like that. And he doesn't want his father to like be disappointed in him for fucking this up. Like, he probably at this point doesn't want to believe it's an inside job. Like, he's heading right down there too. Like, he's angry. He's in the car. I think we get some more K Billy on the radio, and he's on the cell phone calling him. Well, I love that seeing Chris Penn in the windbreaker. Very early 90s.
Yeah, yeah, and so was his outfit, and I said that in an interview himself. He was like, it's his low budget, and we were just kind of told, if you can bring your own clothes. He says, and he says I was sponsored by Nike at the time, and he says that was basically what I was running about in at the time.
I had some windbreaker. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know if that made its way over to Ireland, but I had similar clothes in the 90s.
Yeah, I do remember those type of that type of clothing, and also like shell suits and things like that.
The wind never stood a chance in the 90s.
Bloody track bottoms with like buttons up the side.
Oh my god, yeah.
People used to go up and just pull them. The buttons would all open. I didn't have a pair. I know people that did.
Yeah, Party Boy made those famous. Pulled them off and started dancing.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, that's right. Jackass or something, isn't it?
Yeah, Jackass.
That's right. Yeah. But yeah, of course, then we go into the torture scene, John.
The most famous scene, probably, of this movie, I would assume.
Yeah, and I think it's so clever. I heard a story that apparently, I think it was, sorry to mention him, Harvey Weinstein, didn't want this scene in the movie, or there was some controversy about this scene. And on the Blu-ray, it shows you there's extra footage of them actually shooting. Michael Madsen actually cutting the prosthetic ear off, which didn't end up in the movie. So they end up just panning away, and it leaves your imagination.
I like that.
I prefer that, and I love how it says on the arch, "Watch your head." Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see that, which is a nice little touch. And that had to be, I assume that was really there, which would make sense, right?
I think so. I think it was. I know that they said that when they found the warehouse, that I think it was supposed to just be a normal warehouse. They were going to put boxes and shit around the place. And they were like, no, this is a mortuary. We'll just leave it as it is, and we'll add a hearse, and we'll just leave the caskets. And I think they added a few things like the ramp and things like that. I'm not sure. But yeah, they were like, yeah, just leave it how it is. And I know that Michael Madsen had said that he was saying this tongue in cheek. He was like, I tried to talk Quentin out of actually killing me off. And I tried to prolong my death. He says that's why I went so far back. And I did say to him, like, at one stage, maybe I should fall into a load of like caskets and things. And he says, but no, I never done it. So yeah, I think that's very smartly kind of like filmed, and the way, they kind of make it entertaining, even though it's horrific. The fact that he puts the K Billy super sounds on, and then Steelers Wheel comes on with Stuck in the Middle of You, and how he's dancing with the cutthroat. And as you say, when he goes out to get the petrol can or the gas can, how the music kind of zones out, and you can just hear the surrounding of what's going on outside. Kids playing, birds tweeting, and who would even think, inside this building there's a cop being tortured to death. And a question I had the other night was watching this again was, I never questioned this before. I just thinking like, oh, he's going to burn the cop. But I'm sitting thinking that the other night watching this, like, he threw a load of petrol on a person inside a warehouse. He lights him up. Has he a fire extinguisher there? I mean, is he just going to light the whole place up and leave? I started thinking he's going to light this place up and leave. That's what got me thinking even more. He's doing all this to fuck them over.
I thought about the lighting him up in the warehouse thing. How was that going to work? The only thing is more than likely that ground is fully cement, and he'll burn up, the chair will burn up, but I don't think it'll get on anything else. But that was just me guessing.
Yeah, I know exactly. I mean, I think that's what we're left to assume, that he's just going to light him, and then that's it. Does the trail of petrol, and then I go to myself, is he just bluffing? But then you think, well, no, he's that fucking crazy. Why would he be bluffing?
Oh, he told him up front. He's like, I don't care. You can beg all you want, but I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah. He plays an absolutely brilliant psychopath. He really does.
He felt uncomfortable about the dancing because he's like, Quentin, I can't dance. He's like, well, try something. So that's him trying to dance.
Trying to dance. It's still good. Like, and apparently he was uncomfortable about slapping the cop, slapping the actor, and the actor says, "Look, just do it." But I love that's a classic kind of psychopath dialogue when he says them. Even your boss says there wasn't a setup, and he's like, "Who? My who?" And he says, "Your boss." And he goes, "Let's get one thing straight. I don't have a boss." And and when he doesn't respond, to slap. And he's just like, he's like, okay, you don't have a boss. And he's like, that's shit. He whips
Oh
absolutely brilliant.
yeah, it's great. And then then right away. It always scares me too. It always startles me because it's so loud when he gets shot and killed, and then it's revealed like what. First of all, the way it's zoomed in on him, and the camera doesn't move, so we just kind of see the blood splurt and him like fall, and then it's like they pan out for us to reveal like, oh, it's Mr. Orange.
And if you hadn't used all those bullets, he could have saved Mr. White at the end.
Yeah, he went a little crazy, but we'll give him he's lost a lot of blood.
Yeah, he just wanted to make sure. And then there was that whole kind of dynamic of which what I was reading about censorship in the UK, about the reason why they ended up not censoring the movie and why they kind of had to ban it, because they could have just edited things out. Normally they just edit things out. The reason was because that was such a big plot point of the cop not revealing that Mr. Orange, that he knew Mr. Orange, and that he didn't, as we say, tout or didn't rat on Mr. Orange, right? And that's what the whole theme of the movie's about. The whole theme of the movie's about loyalty.
Yeah. But Mr. Orange is not loyal.
No, he's not loyal.
No, he is not. And this is when we get right into like who he really is, how his name's Freddy, which is such a funny name. And then it goes into the flashbacks about who Mr. Orange really is, and this is it. This is the rat after all. And I love these scenes actually of him, like kind of very well edited together.
Yeah, I love that's one thing that I actually made a note of, John, during this part of the movie as well, because when I was younger, this part of the movie it felt like it always kind of like, because you had so much tension built up in the first hour, right?
Now it's all revealed.
It's all revealed. It kind of falls away from me. But no, watching it again, I love how this is filmed, how Tarantino, to be honest with you, keeps the audience kind of like what's the word I wrote down here, right? He actually keeps the audience engaged. He keeps them engaged with how Freddy or Mr. Orange learns the story of his cover story, and how it's actually filmed, him going through the stages of being in his apartment by himself trying to learn the dialogue.
I bought some weed I was buying for 4 or 5 different fucking people. Finally said, fuck this shit.
And the next thing is he's telling it to his cop friend, I don't even know his name, John, to be honest with you, outside.
I couldn't even run a fucking tape without 6 fucking phone calls interrupting me. Hey, when's the next time you're getting some?
And I totally forgot this. The Lost Boys gets a mention, and then which is just typical Tarantino. And then, of course, then he does this whole situation with the 4 cops with the dog in the toilet.
We see the actual fictional story play out for us, which is cool.
They can smell it on me.
Shut up.
Yeah, it's almost like in my head he said to these cops in the police station, "Listen, I need you to go in there, and I will tell you this story so I can visualize it in my head." It's one thing reading a story, right? It's another thing visualizing it. It's burned into your head then, right? So it's almost like he said, "Look, you do this for me, and I can remember this." And I started thinking, was that one of the cops that got tortured? But I don't think it is.
No, it's not. Actually, all those cops, they look like the most stereotypical cops too. And of course, they got a German Shepherd.
Yeah, right enough to do, yeah. And so I love how he keeps us engaged there of learning that backstory, and then it goes into him to actually telling the story in the bar, which apparently it was a real location. It was actually a gay bar, and they didn't realize.
Of course not.
They didn't realize. They said there's this really nice bar we can use, and so it shows you the results of his backstory and basically how he's suckering them all in, and then of course then that goes into when they're picking him up to go for to meet Joe and to go for the meeting about the bank robbery. And another what's that, John?
That's when we get revealed how they pick all their colors, which is a great scene just with Mr. Pink and Joe going back and forth about being Mr. Pink.
Yeah. but before that, I was going to say, and I've noticed this and never really thought anything of it, before he leaves his apartment and they're outside, they're waiting on him, and he goes into a wee bowl full of, I think it's coins or whatever it is, and he pours it out and he finds his wedding ring and he puts it on. So that tells us about Mr. Orange, that he's obviously separated or divorced, and it's been a while because he's threw it in there and he's threw a load of coins on it. So that tells us something about him. I don't know. Why is he a risk taker? Has he got anything to live for anyway?
Yeah, I always wondered that actually why he goes back for the ring and why there's like really no mention of it. Like I did just for us, really, just a little quick moment, like to give a little backstory to Mr. Orange because we really don't know too much backstory on a lot of these guys other than what's told to us. Like that's why Mr. White gets a lot of background and Mr. Vega gets a lot of background. But Mr. Orange, like even though we get a lot of time with him, we still don't know what he did before this. Like we just know he's a cop. Another little thing that's a little obviously Quentin Tarantino loves comic books, but it's mentioned in this same story how Joe looks like the Thing, and then in his
Yeah.
apartment as well, you could see the Silver Surfer.
That's right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. The thing about the wedding ring too, it always kind of run to me previously. It was more kind of I used to think that he's putting it on. I never ever thought about why does he have a wedding ring and or was he divorced or was he separated or maybe his wife died. But then again, if your wife died, you would probably still wear your wedding ring, maybe until you met somebody else. But the thing is that I kind of thought to me it was more like a cover for him as well. It was all part of his cover story. You know, I'm a happily married man. I'm doing this for me and my wife. Whereas
Well, that
now,
would explain why it's in the coin jar in the coins thing. Like maybe the other cop gave him the wedding ring to throw in there, like, hey, add it to your character, put a ring on your finger. So like he was believing and then he forgot, oh shit, I need the ring. My character wears a ring.
yeah. Well, there was that. There's that as well. Maybe it was given for the character. I don't know. I don't know about that.
So not every question needs an answer, but I do also like when they go out and they're in the car talking, you hear them talking about Pam Grier, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, we
Nice
know
little
Tar-
reference to like later. That just shows you that Tarantino always did love Pam Grier.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would say so. I would say so. And then, as you say, it goes into that scene where we find out they're given their names. And one thing that actually really helps Freddy or Mr. Orange is the fact that he says that don't want to know your real names, don't want to know where you come from, what's your background, which is strange to me because the three of them were in the car before that, and you think the first thing you would say is, "Hi, I'm Freddy."
I know, like no one introduced themselves when they got in the car unless it was like specific instructions that they already received not to introduce each other, just kind of come together.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Nice guy Addy could have contacted them separately and said, "Listen, I'm picking you up. Don't introduce yourself. We're going to tell you plans back at the rendezvous." And it's a very funny scene when they're being given the names, and it's kind of like I love how he says, "Mr. White, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Blue, Mr. Orange, and Mr. Pink." And it's the way he goes, "And Mr. Pink."
I know he's just trying to get rid of that name. Why don't we trade? He's like, there is no trading. He's like, well, can you Mr. Purple? There's another guy named Mr. Purple on another job.
I just, it says he's not Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown sounds like Mr. Shit. And I love how he says about he says Joe says about for God's sake, he's got me so riled up now I can hardly talk.
Lawrence Tierney, my God. And then he's like, I love also just using like those old words, like you would think a guy like he's like, oh, now we can do this big caper.
That's right. I love how he says all as well. I love how the juxtaposition of them and laughing and joking in the car, right? Okay, and then it cuts them all sitting around serious, and he goes, "Oh, you all love to laugh, don't you? You all love to tell jokes, huh? Giggling like little he says that little schoolboys or something." And then he says, when this is all over, I'll go down to Hawaii. And he says, "You'll find me a different character down there." He's just all business, but no, it's I love that scene. Actually, that's one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. Is that scene when they're getting their names and the back and forward and the banter. And Joe, I love Joe's performance in that, or Tierney's performance in that scene.
It is great. He, maybe they didn't like him, but I do like his character in this movie. I think he does add to it. He does feel like somebody, like an older man. That's why he would have his son, Nice Guy Eddie, like really pulling the point here. But it's like, bring in the old man every now and again. But it's really like Nice Guy Eddie's doing all the talk and moving everyone around.
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously this is a bit the thing that I like then, John, as well, is how kind of like they get back to the warehouse. They bring Mr. Orange into the warehouse, and then it fades into just after Mr. Blonde has been shot. Well, it's not right after Mr. Blonde has been shot because there's a bit of time between there. Because I think that the cop and Mr. Orange kind of like they must pass out, and then we see, of course, Nice Guy Addy, Mr. White, and Mr. Pink come back with the diamonds, and they find the body of Mr. Blonde. And obviously, because Nice Guy Addy and Mr. Blonde are as we spoke earlier on, seem to have a really close relationship. He's a wee bit kind of taken back and shaken up. How has this happened?
Yeah, he's literally, and he's furious, honestly, and you can tell he doesn't understand. And I love this. Is actually one of the coolest things. I mean, it's terrible. I feel awful for the cop, he's still alive. He just got saved, so he thinks, okay, I'm gonna get out of this. I'm gonna be, deformed, but I'm gonna get out of this. But he tells him the whole story about like, he went crazy. He was gonna take the diamonds when you guys got here, so I shot him. And then he's like, this cop right here.
This cop?
Yeah. Well, listen, that's one of those things. As soon as he's seen all their faces, as soon as Nice Guy Addy walked into that warehouse, you knew that cop was not getting out.
No, he wasn't gonna. He's gonna let a cop walk away. Like,
no. But of course, Mr. Orange talks him into like, they're gonna be here. It's when Joe comes through the door, that's when the cops are gonna be here. So just hang in. You know what I mean? And stick it out.
Yeah, it does. Honestly, that's one thing. I mean, they show up just a minute too late, the cops, but it does take them a long time to figure this out. I don't know who he leaked the information to, but shouldn't they have figured it out? Like if he told them where the warehouse was, because he'd gone there before.
The cops knew they were going to the warehouse. The thing was that they couldn't show up until Joe.
They wanted Joe. That's what it was. That's right. I forgot they wanted Joe.
Yeah, and that is why when Joe, I know it does take them a while to show up after.
Yeah,
Joe,
even after that, they're able to have a whole conversation in a Mexican standoff.
Yeah, exactly. And do you know what? Even though I know the outcome of this movie, and I still kind of, like you say, these guys, they're not nice guys. None of these guys are nice. They're murderers, the majority of them. Don't know if Mr. Pink is. Oh, Mr. Pink shot one of the cops earlier. But anyway, they're murderers, they're crooks, they only care out for themselves. But at the same time, too, you feel an empathy for them. You feel like, you know what I mean?
We humanize them in this movie with the beginning scene and the scene when they're getting their colors and they're bonding. They're evil, they're terrible, but we humanize them and show them that, yeah, but they're still regular guys when they're alone. They're just going to still hang out and do what me and you do, and they're going to talk about the things they grew up with and their pop culture stuff. Like we just assume, just because of how being a human being and how like close-minded we can be, that like when they're just because they're bad people, they're just bad people through the entire day. Like they're just sitting around talking about the crap. No, when they're alone, they're just doing what we do. It's just you don't want to believe that, but that's what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I talked about that in one of our previous episodes. I think it was Month of the Cuckoo's Nest, where I said about, even the baddest people probably have a good side, right? Mm-hmm. And you see that, funny enough, we talk about serial killers earlier, briefly talked about Michael Madsen's character, and the amount of people, like, for example, who find out certain people are serial killers, and it's like, they say they're family, you know what I mean? And they can't believe it. This guy was so nice to me. This guy, would have went out of his way for me. Or some of these like serial killers that are caught, their fathers. They have children, they have daughters. Some of them are, they're killing women, but they've got daughters, and they treat their daughters like princesses, and yet they're out murdering women. And that's what it means. So, as I say, in the context of this movie, like you say, we actually we realized that some of these characters, through their banter and their conversations, just like us talking about pop culture, they're actually likable. And it always pains me to see how this ends. I almost want them to succeed. How terrible as that sounds, I almost want them to succeed. And that's why it always grinds on me. Why Mr. White really wants to defend this guy against the guys he's known for years. It just doesn't make sense to me.
No, this is where it really doesn't make sense. And, the ending of this movie, it is brutal how these guys all face off with each other. And again, that's what I mean. Chris Penn is 100% right. Everything he's saying, he hit the nail on the head. And the answer is right in front of you, Mr. White. Like, you don't want to see it, but like, it's true. It's him. He is the bad guy. He's the guy. He's the good guy, technically, but you do kind of look at him as a little rat, like a little weasel, like just because the way they play him, like in the beginning, how he's just the first one. It's like a little kid, like in school, like when you were growing up, like, did I give you guys homework for the night? And there's always that one little prick going, no, you forgot to give it to us. And everyone else is looking at him like, why would you say that? Yeah. Like, and that's him, like from the very beginning, like these guys are cool. They know their job, be a professional. He's the guy. And like, but technically we're supposed to be rooting for him, right? Like these guys are horrible, but we're not.
I don't know about you, but see, where I grew up, a rat is the worst thing you can be.
It's everywhere. You don't want to be that. Yeah. Yes.
And as I say, it is heartbreaking. And but I just love how he turns around and he says, where Mr. White says to Joe, he says, he says, how do you know? And he just says, he's the only one I wasn't 100% sure on.
That's it. That's the only proof. That's it. And who was it who said, like, you can't just go by that? Was it Mr. White who said
Mr. White says, and that's your proof?
Yeah, that's your proof.
Like, get out of my way.
But again, he's right. That's what the whole thing is.
He's right. I know. Just as well he wasn't called Mr. Right because he's Mr. Wrong instead of Mr. White. Yeah. But it pains me. And then obviously the shooting, you see
Now
Mr. Pink.
I struggle with this actually when they do fire the weapons at this, which I love the last line before they do.
Stop pointing that fucking gun at my dad!
I always have a hard time understanding the trajectory of the bullets.
Yes. And I was first going to say that Mr. Pink hides under the ramp. So he's ahead of the curve. He's always one step ahead. He can see what's coming here. He doesn't get involved in this one. He's like,
I don't blame him.
Yeah, I don't blame him either. He's like, fuck this. He's got the diamonds under his arms. He gets under and hides. And then, of course, the bullets as well. I can't work this out either because who shoots Nice Guy Addy? It's not who shoots Mr. White because Mr. White shoots Joe and Addy shoots Mr. White. So how does Nice Guy Addy get shot? Because surely he wouldn't have the time to shoot both of them, would he?
No, I mean, we do hear 3 bullets, so I'm guessing that's what we're supposed to think is that he shot both of them really quick. And we do see he's a fast shot earlier in the movie, but I always, because they're zoomed out, so I'm always trying to see it.
Is he 2 guns? Because he had 2 guns earlier.
Yeah, but I don't know if he had 2 guns. I just think he fired it really quick. That's the only thing I can think of, unless Mr. Orange fired a shot in there, but I don't think so. So I don't know.
Well, the thing is, Mr. Orange's weapon is, we mentioned earlier, is totally discharged. There's no bullets left in his gun, I don't think. And then there was a theory that maybe Mr. Pink shot him from underneath the ramp, but I don't know.
I don't know, and it's not very clear, and it doesn't add up. And I always try and look for it. Although this time, after it's all over, I wasn't really paying attention to, because I've seen it so many times, to what Mr. Orange says to Mr. White. I was actually paying attention, listening to the audio outside of Mr. Pink when he runs away.
Yeah, that's right. So they shoot each other, and then obviously Mr. Pink leaves, and you think he's getting away, but as obviously Mr. White pulls himself up to Mr. Orange and says, "Oh, looks like we're going away for a while." Which again, I don't know. Obviously, Mr. Orange feels guilty, so he tells him the truth, which I think was, well, if you had waited 5 minutes, you could have told him the truth when the cops were in there.
He could have picked a better time.
Yeah, because this guy's going to shoot you because he's a psycho, and because you know his profile. He's killed cops before. You seen him kill cops earlier. He doesn't give a shit about you if you've double crossed him.
And you just did the ultimate betrayal by actually making him untrust his friends.
Exactly. But in the background, you can hear Mr. Pink get caught by the cops.
I'm a cop. Larry.
Yep, he doesn't get away, and
Doesn't get away.
That's cool how they actually did that. I don't know if you saw this movie for the first time. I don't even know if you even would be able to pick up on that because your mind is going to be just paying attention to their conversation.
Yeah, you know what? As I said, John, it was so many years since I've seen this. I can't even. It's not one of those movies I can remember what I was thinking about that. As I was just, I always used to say there was 3 movies that made me really nervous when I sat down to watch it, and I think I mentioned it in our one of our previous podcasts, and obviously Jaws was one of them. I was very nervous watching Jaws when I was a kid, watching it, scared. RoboCop was another one which unnerved me, and Reservoir Dogs was the other one. So I was basically like on the edge of my seat throughout watching this whole movie. I probably didn't pick up on what was going on outside. I don't know when I realized what was happening outside. I have seen people have conversations and debates about, did Mr. Pink get away? And it's like, well, no, he didn't. You can clearly hear he didn't get away if you listen. Like you say, people are too kind of like stuck on what the drama was happening inside the warehouse, which is great. And I love that. I love that you don't see him get arrested or anything like that. I think that would just take away from the drama and how the camera just stay. You don't even see the cops come in.
Don't see the cops, or even when he gets shot, he just falls out of frame.
Out of frame. Just the look of anguish and pain and regret on Harvey Keitel's face at that part of the movie.
Oh my God, the little cry he does, like that high pitched like scream, like, are you like you feel it, like he's like the ultimate betrayal.
Yeah, it's gut wrenching, and he shoots Mr. Orange.
Oh yeah, well that was
you hear the shot.
Yeah, he shoots him, and then they shoot him.
And then they shoot him, and I just love how he falls, and I love how just the camera just lingers on. That shot for a few seconds before it cuts to black, and Coconut plays, which I love that song, Coconut.
I know. Isn't that such a weird thing to pull into? Is like such a calming song like that right after we just had this big shootout to end the movie.
Yeah, and I love, but how it kind of like references the sore belly.
Yeah, the sore belly.
Sore belly, put the lime in the coconut, make it feel better. And that's what I think about. I think about his sore belly, and if he had some lime in a coconut, he might be all right.
He's not sore anymore.
No, damn, he has no head left.
Yeah. But I wonder, it's weird that you would layer the audio like that to where you could hear what I wonder if the intent was that you'd only pick that up on rewatch, because you do keep the audio so low on what's going on outside that they do want you to make sure that what's most important going on right now is everything between Mr. Orange and Mr. White. This is just supposed to be in the background.
You know what? I actually many years ago I was in one of our local bookshops, and I seen the screenplays to Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. I still have them, but I boxed them away in the attic, and when I moved house, and they're still up there, and I maybe should take them out and put them on the shelf of my other film books. But I do know that the movie originally opened with like a title card that said, like, you know, something along the lines of, I can't remember, I'm paraphrasing here. It says something along the lines of one of these men is a cop. By the end of the story, only 5 will survive, or something like that, or all 6 will be dead, bar 1, something like that, at the start when they're walking down the street. So I'm kind of thinking here, was there extra scenes that should have been filmed, the likes of Mr. Pink being arrested? But because it's such a low budget movie, they didn't have time to film it. And they decided, well, do you know what? Maybe we'll just put the audio in the background and let the audience suss it out that way. I don't know. I mean, that's just me throwing that out there. And
that makes a lot of sense. How much money would it cost to film the whole arrest scene with like a bunch of police cars out front with a bunch of extras dressed up in police uniforms? With just the audio, I mean, I don't even know if you have to record the audio. You might be able to just get some like archival audio somewhere.
Yeah, and the thing about it too is that, look, we know Tarantino was a very smart filmmaker. We know that. But sometimes directors, especially when they're under the couch or they're at the start of their career, they have to use other means and methods to tell their story. And unfortunately, that's what happens. Sometimes scenes get cut. You can't film certain scenes. You have to kind of like improvise on the spot. And just you asking that question, I just kind of thinking, you know, it's all. Something like that may be too flashy for this movie, but we're not in the warehouse for the full movie. We do have the aftermath of the heist. We do have them running away from the jewelers, and we do have the likes of, like, you know, Mr. White and Mr. Orange escaping and shooting the 2 cops in the car, and the woman being shot as well. So we do have certain action in the movie, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe that's what it was, rather than a conscious decision of, we'll just throw this in the background as a wee kind of, will the audience notice it or not? I think it more maybe just kind of, no, we have to address this and we can't do it the way we want it to.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. Because even if you think of those scenes you mentioned, like with the police like being shot and everything, the police get killed in the police car, and you kind of just see the blood on the windshield. And it's very similar, like, you know, where they could save money. You could see the areas where they were able to save money. Like when the cops are chasing Steve Buscemi, what do we see? 2 cops in like the same uniforms that we see him in the later scenes, the beige police uniforms that we see in the later scene in the bathroom. Like, there was ways that they were able to like cover up for the amount of money. Like, they spent probably a lot of their money, if I had to guess, on the music for this movie.
Well, just talking about the blood, they spent their budget for blood just on Mr. Orange and Mr. Blonde. That was it.
Oh my God, they dumped buckets on them.
Yeah, I think Tim Roth says they had to scrape him off the concrete at the end of every day.
Yeah, he was actually stuck to the ground because he was in it so long.
Yeah, and then he says they had to hose him down before he went home, and he says it wasn't too bad when Michael Madsen had the same problem. Had to be scraped off and both hosed down.
That's one of the big reasons I love movies, is like, you know, we watch this movie, we get into the characters, but I love actually hearing about them making the movies, and like that's like a day of work for them.
Yeah, exactly. That's the fascination for me too, John. I love that as well. There's certain movies that are more fascinating than others, but yeah, that it does make it fascinating, and especially when you have characters like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean characters within the movie. I mean those type of character actors. They're characters themselves in real life. They really are. They're not your polished movie star.
None of them in this movie. I mean, Harvey Keitel, I guess, would be the big one. Like, I mean, we're forgetting.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people say that this is like Harvey Keitel's comeback. This is the same year he does Bad Lieutenant, which I think is his best performance he ever did. I love Bad Lieutenant, but he never went away. He just maybe wasn't
No.
at the forefront anymore. Like, this kind of brought him back. Like, he was like now, like he's in the piano around this time. Then he's in like From Dusk Till Dawn. Like, he kind of went back up to like he's all over the place again. But he never went away. People like this is like his big comeback. It's the first one, like John Travolta. I'd say John Travolta never went anywhere either. He's just in Look Who's Talking.
Yeah. No, listen, he was well known. But another funny thing that crossed my mind as well, John, and I don't know if this was done intentionally either, because I don't know, as I said, this was the first Tarantino movie I'd seen. This was also the first time I'd seen these actors in a movie, and a particular time I didn't really know who any of them were. It was more kind of faces after that. Oh, he's in Reservoir Dogs or whatever. But one thing I noticed when I was watching it the other night was how Tim Roth's name, or they showed Tim Roth last at the start of the movie when they're walking down the car park, and have it as and Tim Roth. I felt as if that was another way to throw the audience off. This guy can't be the cop. This guy can't be the one that set them up, because he's insignificant to the whole thing. You know, he's insignificant, but that's not the case. You know, and that's very smart. If that was the case, it's very smart from the director to do that.
I mean, I've heard of directors doing things like that. Like, when you watch the movie Seven, they never put Kevin Spacey's name in the opening credits, so that you never suspect that he would be even in the movie enough to be the killer. So this completely thrown off. That's why he gets the first credit in the post credits, because they specifically withheld his name from the credits in the beginning, so you wouldn't even know he's in the movie. So there are points when directors do things like that. But this movie, if you've never seen it before, there's 100%. I can never imagine somebody being able to call Mr. Orange being the rat from the very beginning, even with all the hints. I just don't think you can call it just because of the fact he got shot in the stomach. And why would you expect a guy dying on the floor to be the actual rat?
Yeah. No, listen, I agree with you. I think it is one of the great reveals in movies. And I think it, even to this day, it holds up. And I think that it's only movie nuts like us who basically would say things like the orange balloon, and the fact that, oh, he's the first one to call the person out at the table, you know, for not paying the money for the waitress at the start, the tip. I think that a lot of people would not pick up on that at the time. Plus, as well, you know, certain periods in the movie, sometimes it takes a while for you to realize, oh, there's a twist here. I know they said at the start somebody set us up, but it could be anybody. The movie's still unfolding. It hasn't specifically said that the person that set them up was within that group. Mm-hmm. You know, you're only kind of surmising they're with, you know, as the movie goes on, oh, it's within that group. You know, it only becomes more established as it goes on. Oh, it's within this group. You know, at the very start, you're not, I don't think you're really clued into that quite yet. And maybe that's why they got rid of that title card at the start as well, because maybe that meant that the audience was watching out for it, and you don't want them to be sitting watching. You want them to be enjoying the story about what's happening on the screen, rather than looking out for something, you know, and not paying attention about what's happening on the screen.
Yeah, if you're anticipating something, you're not exactly paying attention to what's unfolding.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But, you know, this movie, I think, played out pretty well. And apparently a lot of other people did, because this movie was a Sundance hit. And then it got picked up by Miramax. And that started a long relationship of Quentin Tarantino working with Harvey Weinstein and all them and everything. I think all the way up until, like, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was the first picture he did, I think, with Sony. But other than that, he was a Miramax guy. And the movie went on to be pretty successful. But really what this movie did was piggyback his career into making Pulp Fiction. And that's really where things took off for Quentin Tarantino. Yeah.
As I said earlier on in the podcast, John, I feel as if Reservoir Dogs was one of those movies that it was it's spread by word of mouth, and I think that it was one of the ones that a lot of people went back and revisited after Pulp Fiction. This was the movie that kind of, as you said, got him established in Hollywood. But Pulp Fiction was really the movie that really made him. I feel as if it really made him a household name. Very few directors to become household names, very few in the business, and he's one of them. And a lot of people now can talk about, you know, his work, like, you know, you have Hitchcockian and you have Spielbergian. You also have, I don't know what it's called, but a lot of people would say it's not Tarantinoan, but there's a lot of people would reference his style of movie making
Oh my god! That right after this, you got everybody tried to make their own versions of like a Quentin Tarantino film. You could argue that Guy Ritchie essentially took what he does and just took it to the next level. Like Quentin Tarantino developed his own style that people started to rip off, especially right after this with the independent film movement. I always felt like a movie like this also kind of led to other movies that are not necessarily like Reservoir Dogs, but kind of follow in the like it's an independent film, but it's got these actors who aren't known yet, but eventually they're all not polished. Like a movie like Train Spotting, I always felt like was kind of like Reservoir Dogs or maybe more Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. No, listen, I 100% agree with you. What actually happened after this? Well, more Pulp Fiction more than anything, but this
Yeah.
led to it was you had more of an influx of these types of movies were fast paced, fast cutting, trying to be witty dialogue, and and even though we'd already had movies like Casino, sorry, not Casino, like Goodfellas, that kind of had that style, but and had like pop music throughout the movie. I feel as if it was more Tarantino's brand that had a lot of filmmakers trying to imitate that. And to be honest with you, John, that's all they were, imitations.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. I've seen Snatch. I watched it many years ago. I think Guy Ritchie done a great job in the Sherlock Holmes movie. I know he's done other movies, but I just felt as if he was a complete and utter Quentin Tarantino knockoff, and he was probably the best of the knockoffs. But there was plenty coming out after that, and I seen a video with Tarantino talking about the name Reservoir Dogs. Where does it come from? And he basically said it doesn't mean anything, doesn't come from anywhere. I just thought it suited these group of characters that they were Reservoir Dogs. And he says, if anybody ever asked me, any bigwig at a studio, what does that mean? He would say, oh well, in France, it means, he said it in French, and he says it means you're a rat. And they went, oh, that's very smart. And he says, it doesn't mean anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually said in that interview was that the part of the reason why he wrote Reservoir Dogs was because he thought to himself, whatever happened to the heist movie? And this, when you think about the 90s, the likes of what came off the back of Reservoir Dogs, all the heist movies that came out in the 90s after that.
Yeah, Heat comes out 3 years after this that overshadows, but there's a ton of heist movies in the 1990s.
Yeah. Which Heat is another great heist movie, not in the same vein as a.
No, that's a big budget heist movie.
But it's not to say that every heist movie tried to copy Reservoir Dogs, but it was basically all of a sudden this genre, kind of came back again for a period. Whereas like heist movies were, you had them back in the 70s and things they got in the 60s, and
yeah, they really kind of went away, which is crazy when you think about it.
yeah.
You would think that they would be like, because that's such an interesting genre.
Yeah, it is. I mean, crime and murder, people are always
always fascinated by it, and that's why he was kind of prolific when he first came out. Is like they're talking like bad, like these kind of like cool, quippy talking dialogue that they got, but then they're criminals. Everyone likes violence, everyone's attracted to it, and these guys are firing guns like crazy, killing each other. Especially like again, this kind of is like the stopgap to get us to Pulp Fiction because. Like a lot of people love Reservoir Dogs, but the world kind of changed when you get to Pulp Fiction. So a lot of the stuff we kind of bring up here eventually just kind of gets blown up in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. Like about the word I was looking for was king, the king of cool, and that's and that's basically I gotta not remember that word, but anyway, I was probably trying to think of something more fancy. But it was he's the king of cool, and like I said, it's impractical, but it's movies, and you can do that in movies, and it's impractical to go and do a job like that. Like I was thinking about it when they were walking down that car park. Like I mean, if anybody's seen them in that restaurant that morning dressed like that, if anybody, you might think they're going there for a funeral, but if anybody's seen them, which is ironic, they end up in a mortuary and then dead themselves. But the thing is that anybody's seen them walking down that car park, and then 10 minutes, half an hour later, they're doing a heist job. It's not too hard for the police to put that out. Did you see anybody dressed like this? And say, well, they're in that restaurant. Well, who were they with? Well, they were with Joe, who lives down the road. Nice guy, Eddie. His son, nice guy, Eddie. Was there. Joe actually paid for the meal. Oh, yeah. There was a tip of $6, but then they ended up giving us $7. But, it's so that's all impractical. It's the kind of cool. It's more kind of the visuals more than anything. And then that leans into Pulp Fiction. And I thought it was interesting where Tarantino actually said that he thinks that Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction should be in the comedy section in the video store. And he says, if you were just to record the audience watching my movies, they would be in laughter. And I think that Pulp Fiction is more kind of absurd than Reservoir Dogs. That's why I think Reservoir Dogs is my favorite of his, because it is, even though the comedy comes more from the banter between the guys and kind of how real that feels, and that kind of like banter that you would have with your friends sitting having a meal. You know what I mean? Or the comedy comes out of the bad situation they're in, and how they're kind of ragging on each other. You know, whose fault? It's your fault. Oh, it's my fault. That's my fault. But you're this and you done that and what that. You know, the comedy. You know, you've been in that situation maybe with friends or family. Whereas, like, if you had a camera on you, you would find the humorous side of it, even though it was in a serious situation, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I find that's why I like Reservoir Dogs more than his other movies, is because of this. It's more serious, whereas I think Pulp Fiction becomes very absurd. The comedy in that, it does become very absurd, and that's what he says himself about them movies. And I feel as if what we said earlier about what is the legacy of Reservoir Dogs, especially it is quintessentially a 90s movie. And like I earlier said in the podcast, is that everybody thought they could be Quentin Tarantino after that because he used to work in a video store. Everybody thought they could write witty dialogue. Everybody thought they could make movies for next to nothing and they'd be the next big thing. And I think that's what a lot of them rip-offs them were kind of born out of. And also, you also then have a studio system. It's the same thing with the slasher movie. It's kind of like when a studio sees that you can make a low budget movie like that for next to nothing and have a big hit out of it, you know, they're going to throw their weight behind that genre as well.
Yeah, they just water it down and milk it to nothing from that point. Like the big thing that Quentin Tarantino got out of this that maybe doesn't get talked about enough, a lot of great directors get this, is that basically because the movie was so well received by critics that movie studios entrusted him, and he was always able to get final cut and make the movie he always wanted to make. He never worked with a major studio his entire career. He always wanted to make sure that the movie he was making was 100% the movie that he wanted to make. So you know it's a Quentin Tarantino film through and through. A lot of directors will give that up right away. We see it all the time now, especially like in the 90s. You could do this because the independent scene was so well revered. We kind of came off the 80s with their commercialization of film, which me and you love. But the 90s was kind of more like the 70s, where, you know, the movies were a little bit more low budget. They looked a little bit grittier, but there was still money, and the studios tried to make their versions of that. Nowadays, when an independent director comes along and makes a movie that makes some money like this, they're going to make a Marvel movie. That's what they're doing next. And it's a shame. We lose the directors who actually have a vision, those auteurs, because they kind of give it up for money.
Yeah. Well, I remember hearing, I think I mentioned it before, but a statistic about, you know, back in the day, they would make like, the studio would make say 25 movies in a year or 30 movies in a year, but they know for them movies, they would be banking on them being big blockbusters, so they could make the other 20 were kind of a risk, you know, and you might get one or two big hits out of that 20, right? But what's actually happening now is that they're not taking the risk on the other 20. They're firing out 10. Trying to fire 10 blockbusters instead. You know, and they're not taking a risk on anything. So rather than that, prefer to throw out 10 blockbusters than rather 4 and maybe take a risk and get another 2 or 3 in there. But like I say, when you take the risk, that's what changes the genre. That's what changes things up. That's what keeps things fresh. That's what keeps the audience engaged. And unfortunately, we're losing that. And it's funny how Tarantino, as you said there about having final cut, thing was back in the day, like, to make a movie, almost nearly had to be in a studio system to get a movie made, to get the finance to get it made, and that's why a lot of like directors didn't have final say unless you were really successful. We know through Steven Spielberg, you know, Zanuck and Brown entrusted them with Jaws, and I feel as if they didn't put pressure on him to cut really anything. It basically was his cut, but because of that, because of the success of that, he was able to then walk into a studio and kind of say, "I want my final cut." And unfortunately, he didn't have time to do that in Close Encounters because he ran out of budget. But he had the opportunity to go back and do it a few years later. And then of course he worked with Lucas on Raiders of the Lost Ark. And you know, that was original screenplay, so I would dare say he had final say on that. But the likes of Hitchcock, as I explained to you before, he used to just film exactly what he needed, and he used to have everything kind of like storyboarded out. And I think that was his way of having control over when it went in the editing, because you didn't have anything to work with. You had to edit together exactly what he filmed. But I know that Tarantino did say himself is that when he used to write a script and bring it to the studio, and they would say, "Well, it's very good, but could you not do this?" He used to say, "No, that's the movie, and if that, yeah," and he says, "and if you don't want to film that, then I'm not doing it."
Yeah, and honestly, I get that. Like, I wrote this whole thing. I have a vision for it. You're asking me to adjust the vision. I can't guarantee the results on that then. If you come in and meddle in and put in what you want, it changes around the entire vision. And that's why, I mean, I hate that we always get up on it, but when you watch most modern day studio films, it just feels like it's a produced film by a studio that has to hit certain agenda points, and they always look the same, feel the same tonally, and they feel lifeless and hollow.
Yeah, well, this actually crossed my mind recently, and I don't know why it popped into my head. It's like, for example, Back to the Future. They wanted Doc Brown to have a chimpanzee instead of a dog, and it was because the studio said, "Well, we've done research and we know that audiences like chimpanzees," and they were like, "Why would he have a chimpanzee? No, he has a dog."
I know that goes. You've seen the movie Scrooge, right, with Bill Murray?
Yeah,
There's a little line in there where Robert Mitchum's walking with Bill Murray and they're talking. He's like, we've done studies that show that like cats and dogs are starting to watch TV. So we want you to start I'm not saying put a show out there for them specifically, but like in the background, put like a toy or something for them so that like they start watching too before we start getting geared programming. And that's exactly like how a producer thinks. It's like, in your movie, could you just do this? I'm not saying change it, but just do this because we did research. And it's like you do that like 30 times in a movie. Now it's all changed around.
yeah, exactly. And look, that whole chimpanzee thing might change the whole dynamic of the movie.
Yeah.
Even
I
the
mean,
smallest they think it's going to be, it could change the whole dynamic of the character and what the audience actually thinks, because we can relate to having a dog, but we can't relate to owning a chimpanzee. As your dog walks in,
I know. I
he
don't
must
know.
know he must know I'm talking about dogs.
He's heard something outside. But I think we covered pretty much everything we can cover here on Reservoir Dogs, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. I really enjoyed this one. I think it's been a good one.
I think so too. I mean, we had nothing broke us up today, so we just like completely were able to just to go unhinged, and I think we covered our ground a lot on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. I got a brand new setup here. Don't have to worry about battery power, connection, anything. So
yeah, we're hoping you guys enjoyed this. Like, I really think we'd, with the new setup with David here, I think the audio will be a little better, the visuals, and I think the show will only get better for it. And Reservoir Dogs was a good place to start with this. But what are we doing next time, David?
well, next time, John, me and you are going to attend the rematch of the century in Rocky 2.
Yes, and Rocky 2, just a little ahead of time. Like the last time I watched through the Rockies, other than Rocky 4, my beloved Rocky 4, Rocky 2 was my favorite. So I'm thinking watching it this time because I haven't seen it since that last watch through. This could possibly rise up my rankings to number one and maybe dethrone Drago, but I don't know. Rocky 4, you beat communism. Can you beat anything more?
That's it. We need him at the minute. We need him now. So yeah, but no, I think I remember us talking about the Rockies, and I think, I don't know, we discussed it, and I'd said to you about how much I love 2, and you were like, really? And then you watched them again. I'm like, actually, I think you're right there. 2's pretty good. So listen, we can get into it. 2 for me is my favorite. I know it's not the best. I think the first movie's the best, but 2 is my favorite Rocky.
Yeah, I think that's always kind of where the debate goes. Like, you kind of got to like take Rocky 1 out of it just because
Yeah.
of everything that Stallone put into even just getting that movie made, and then the fact that it comes out and everything just works so well in that movie. It's a Best Picture winner. You know that Rocky's the best, but it's really about like what's your favorite of them.
Yeah, listen, if you're a fan of the franchise, that's basically what it comes down to. That's what I feel like anyway. I mean, I'm one of those guys that I'm an unapologetic fan of Rocky 5. So I love all of them.
I like Rocky 5 too. I actually think my least favorite. We'll get into this next time, but my least
Maybe
favorite is
next time.
actually Rocky Balboa. But we'll
Yeah.
discuss that on the next Let's Talk Movie podcast with me, John, and David, aka Shamrock Balls. And we will see you guys next time around. Hey everyone, just popping in at the end of the video for this week's digital code giveaway. And every single video that we do here on Friday, I ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you have to do is answer 1 in the comment section below. And as long as you do that, you come back to Tuesday's video where I'll put your name on a magic wheel. We'll spin that bad boy 2 times. The 2 names it lands on, they have their choice of the digital code that you've seen on your screen before you today. And we just got done talking about Reservoir Dogs. I know I've asked you guys in the past, but I'm going to ask you guys again. What is your favorite Quentin Tarantino movie? And what is your favorite Quentin Tarantino film character? Leave those answers in the comment section below. And guys, we also have channel membership, so if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel like John Doe Juggler, and once you hit that producer's tier, you'll be entered into our monthly 4K Blu-ray giveaway. This month, Kevin Kruger, our channel director, he actually donated Constantine on 4K Steelbook for that very giveaway. So as long as you're a producer or higher, that means if you're a producer or a director like Kevin Kruger and Uncle V, or a channel bankroll member like Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews and Mr. Smelly Potato, you guys will be entered into that physical media 4K Blu-ray giveaway that we will be doing on this Tuesday's show along with the digital code giveaway. So don't forget to come back to this Tuesday's video. But guys, as always, if you have no money to throw away, don't worry about it at all. We just hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.